What is up, YouTube? I'm just getting myself to go live right now on Instagram. And are we live? No, what's happening? Fuck, come on, Instagram. I don't understand. Obviously, it must be a me thing, but I understand why just Monday nights my internet seems to always crap out for IG. All right, so we are now live on YouTube and Instagram. Appreciate everyone that's been jumping in the chats preemptively. Dave Cross was asking about some tips or tricks when it comes to screening tenants. So yeah, let's talk about that while I kind of get myself situated here. Gotta clean up. I got like papers everywhere. So as far as like some tips or tricks when it comes to screening tenants, one of the first things that we regularly talk about on my channel and with the Cashflow Tribe crew is the idea of having very specific instructions on how someone should apply or participate if they want to apply to, become a tenant of your apartment building. And so essentially what we're going to do is like have very specific instructions. And if they can't follow those instructions, well, then that's a sign that they're probably not a good fit for us or not a good tenant, or they're probably not going to follow any other rules or regulations that we might set up with our rental property in the future. And so either way, that's not an ideal tenant profile, in my opinion. So that's one of the simplest ways. So that can be all sorts of things, right? It could be like, at the bottom of the application, draw me a smiley face or draw a smile face or whatever. It can be, please send all documents in one email, right? And like you can even explicitly say like in it, like please follow all instructions exactly to the detail. And again, if they don't do that, it's a sign that they might struggle or challenge you when it comes to your other rules or regulations around your rental properties. So Dave, hope that helps when it comes to screening your tenants. See, a couple people are asking about corrections and stuff like that. I don't actually have a crystal ball either, unfortunately. So we did do a story earlier today where I was talking about cryptocurrency and the stock market and things of that nature. I think I covered a lot of my thoughts in that live stream. So definitely encourage those of you that want to check it out to go check it out, preferably after this live stream. But otherwise, high level, what my thoughts are on that is, it's difficult for me to see that there's enough value being generated to justify a lot of the pricing we're currently seeing for a lot of stocks or cryptocurrencies for that matter. Again, that doesn't mean that people won't make lots of money. And so it's really important that people understand that there's a difference between, losing money and speculating. You can speculate and make a lot of money, and you can even do it for an extended period of time, but that doesn't inherently mean that you weren't speculating. And so what I really discussed is regardless of what you're doing, as an investment philosophy, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, whether it's cryptocurrency, do you have a competitive advantage, right? Do you have something that sets you apart? Or are you willing to work or invest the time and energy to develop one? If the answer is no to both of those, then just understand it is a struggle for me to really wrap my head around why you should win, right? Like if all you're doing is following one random YouTuber that tells you to buy Bitcoin or tells you to buy even real estate, and you're not actually implementing any of the lessons they teach, or worse, if they're not even teaching any lessons, but they're just speculating themselves, then that's a concern for me, right? That's really where we're getting into very clearly speculating rather than being an actual investor. So if you can't describe how you're generating value for the economy, then there's a good chance that you're speculating, right? And just understand that. And again, at some point in time, it does catch up to you as a speculator. Tanner asked, hey, Matt, when doing an assignment, when do you normally collect your assignment fee? Is it on the day the property closes? Tanner, that's usually it'll be like a day or two afterwards that your lawyer will actually forward you the funds. But yeah, that's the day that you're going to get your hands on the cash. Yes, please, as Crystal's asking, if everyone could smash the like button, that would be much appreciated. So smash away. Otherwise, we kind of got caught up in the questions there, and I didn't even bring out the bong. I haven't been paying attention. Let me know. I know we're under less of a lockdown. Are head shops open now? Could I go out into the wild and buy a bong? Is that a thing, or is that still a crime? Let me know in the comment section, because I don't really pay attention, but I know they're loosening the rules. Are we allowed to have people over? How closely do you guys pay attention to these rules? And like, I don't mean like necessarily even abiding by them, but like, are you refreshing every day? Does mainstream media tell you when it's updated? If it wasn't for the occasional Facebook group chat I'm participating in, or the fact that we've got writers that write stories on things, I'd honestly, like, half the time I wouldn't even know if I was breaking the law. Just be like, it's so weird. There was a time when like there was only like a couple TV stations, a couple newspapers, and everyone got their news from there. And so I think it'd be very reasonable for the powers that be to assume that that information could disseminate very fast. And while in theory, with the information age, it could disseminate even faster. And another way, it's really easy for us to kind of stay in our little bubbles and be unaware of what's going on in the greater world. So, can you access the eviction record online? I don't know what you mean by that, but I don't think so. If you mean like, can I just access a giant list of people who have been evicted? I do not believe so. I don't even believe that there's a list like that, is there? Because like, understand it's illegal in the province of Ontario for landlords to keep a list like that. Oh, Brant Fro says, I sit on city council, so LOL. Which city council, Brantfo? See that on Instagram. On London City Council? That would be cool. Hey, which market would you recommend to buy a house under $250,000 that can easily go on rent? Windsor is a heavy bidding war currently. Supreme Insights. Yeah, definitely appreciate that question. My biggest concern is, are you actually on Brantford's downtown Ward 5? I would love to talk to you, Brantfro, some point in time. I'm pushing hard your real estate. Maybe you don't even like that, but I see a lot of opportunity in Brantford. So definitely, if you're ever interested, send me a DM, and I'd love to chat either on or off the record about Brantford. But Supreme Insights was asking, hey, which markets would you recommend to buy a house under 250? Can easily go on rent. Windsor is a heavy bidding war currently. So yeah, I get it. I understand even why you asked that question. A lot of people ask that question, but Supreme, understand that you're a man or a person in search of a nail because you're carrying a hammer. So I'm going to assume that you've got $250,000, or you could qualify for $250,000, and that's why you've got your mind set on it. That's not, honestly, in my opinion, the best way to go about real estate investing. What we should really focus on is, what's your why, what's your purpose behind real estate investing, what's your intentions, what are your goals, and then develop around that. Because you didn't even ask if you could cash flow. What if I could find you a property that doesn't cash flow, or where vacancy rates are at 50%, right? When people start really walking around with one tool and search, like when you're walking around with a hammer in search of a nail, understand that that's when you really start to make mistakes as a real estate investor. That's when you decide to invest in that random northern Saskatchewan town that you never even knew existed, that only has one employer and 1,000 views and things like that. So again, really, I think it's important to understand what is your intentions as an investor firsthand, and then build out the plan from that. But again, people don't like that. So Chatham, there's a market that you could buy a house for under $250,000, and it could go on rent easily. Sarnia, you could probably still find a house in Sarnia for under $250,000. There's not a lot, but I think we just did one for like $220,000 the other day. Or maybe it's coming out, or about, I don't know, something like that. We do a lot of deals now. It's fun, but also kind of scary. I don't fully know all the deals that come in and out of the pipeline anymore, because that's really Adam Martin's domain. So, but I heard that we were doing something like that. St. Thomas, you might be able to stumble into the occasional property. I'm not saying that any of these are the right market for you to invest in, but like Leamington, also, I wouldn't be surprised if you could find an opportunity there. But again, I don't love the idea of choosing our market just based upon an arbitrary price point. Laura G, hey Matt, can you do a BRRRR with 10% down, or can you only refinance with 20% down? Laura, yeah, understand that the first thing you're going to have to do there is you're going to have to be able to, when you refinance it to a 20% loan to value. So in theory, you could buy it with 10% down and then BRRRR it out. But just understand, when you BRRRR it out to pull out the new equity you created, your lender is going to want to see you have 20% equity, right? So they're only going to give you an 80% loan to value mortgage. And again, the other aspect to that is understand that your CMHC fees are also a real cost, right? So Either way, let's say you paid 3% or 4% of the purchase price of the house as CMHC fees. Whether you keep that CMHC mortgage for 1 month, 1 year, or 5 years, you still paid the same amount of fees. So for a lot of people, it could often end up being cheaper if you plan on burning the property in a short period of time to go get a hard money or private lending to avoid that 4% cost, because it's 4% of the entire mortgage amount, right? That's pretty significant. And again, regardless of whether you need it for a day or a year. So depending upon all the other details, it could actually be more affordable and easier for you in a bunch of different ways to do the 20% down and burr. What's the difference between wholesale and a double closing? Nothing really. I think it's mainly just terminology, black and gold. If I had to get a little bit more specific, I'm going to say a wholesale probably involves, like, you might sweep the floors, you might remove all the junk, you might do some basic things like that. But outside of that, you're probably not going to do a lot more. Where a double close, maybe you're literally just like putting a sign in the ground and going to turn around and sell it. But again, I think that's a pretty soft differentiation. I think a lot of people would use them interchangeably. All right, let's smoke some weed. And today we're smoking black gas. So that is, that was a big rip. All right. You can in Alberta. My reservation recently caught the UK strain. My reservation recently caught the UK strain that came from China. Awesome. I don't even know what to say to that. That sounds bad. That sounds unfortunate. I'm not sure I understand the whole context there, but one thing I will say is I touched upon this at the end of last year, the start of this year. I do have concerns that we could be in a cyclical cycle of lockdowns and new strains and things of that nature. It definitely feels like, to a degree, the narrative's going in that direction. A lot of things can change, but I think it's obviously very unfortunate if society goes in that direction. But we will have to wait and see, because I'm too far out from a revolution at this point. What do you think about Toronto condo right now? Yeah, Clay, if you didn't see, we recently just had a video come out. I think it came out with our local expert, Emma Pace, on the January stats that came out in the month of February. The condo market appears to be rebounding pretty hard. So, like, we were talking with Emma, right? In theory, you might have missed out on the bottom of the market. Again, no one's got a perfectly working crystal ball, but the way the market's shaping up, it looks like it's firming up. It seems to be strengthening the condo market in regards to demand and the ratio of demand and supply, right? If I remember, I think we were at like 1 month's inventory right now for condos. But again, go back and jump back to the Silver Mat interviewing Pace of Base and talking about the Toronto condo market, because Emma's definitely an expert in that. So I'm actually really excited and really proud that we're able to make videos like that, because I know back in 2010, when I originally started investing in real estate, or back in like, when would it have been? Probably in like 2010 is when I bought. So like probably back in 2003 is when I really started getting itchy towards wanting to buy rental properties. And then 2005 is when I really started thinking about doing it. And for both those times in my life, the reason it took me so long to actually pull the trigger was just a lack of information and confidence. And I'd like to hope that a lot of the information we're able to provide these days are able to help give people the information, the insights, and the confidence they need to be able to move forward as a real estate investor. Already did that one. Hey, Matt, I just picked up a multi-property. One tenant is on ODSP. I will be receiving rent payments from the government. Do you have any comments on this? Are there any restrictions to rent increases? So yeah, Josh, like I've definitely got buildings with tenants that are on ODSP. The one thing I will say about when the government's paying you direct, when you're looking at acquiring a new tenant, I wouldn't take that as a huge boon. I wouldn't take that as a huge positive. And the reason I say that is because with most government programs, the original beneficiary or whatever the term is, the person on ODSP or the government program, they can usually cancel the payments going directly to you without your involvement. So what that means is they can always cancel the payments and start having them come to you. So when I was a younger, more naive landlord, there was maybe one or two social workers that kind of took advantage of me and really sold me a bill of goods in that regards, where they were like, oh, and the government will pay you direct, so you never have to worry about payment and da 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 da. And it's true, as long as the tenant doesn't send any direction to the government to stop paying you, it's great. But the moment they do, then again, now you're back into a situation that can be very frustrating as a landlord. So that's really the only caution I'd give. But I wouldn't really let the fact that the tenant is or isn't on ODSP play a major role in my decision. What I'd really focus on is the individual, right? There's a lot of different contexts and situations that could lead to a person being on ODSP. So it's much more about the individual, in my opinion. So things I'd look for, regardless, again, is just do they seem respectful? Do they seem like a positive oriented person or a problem oriented person, right? Talk to them about their previous landlords. Were all their previous landlords assholes? Because again, it's one of those things where they might have just had a string of bad luck. But if you sit down at a poker table and you can't spot the sucker, it means you're the sucker. Well, if everyone around you is an asshole, the odds are that you're actually the asshole. So again, if they've only had asshole landlords, if everyone in life is out to get them, if they're constantly focusing on the negative, that's usually a bad sign for me in regards to the direction that the relationship could be going in for the tenancy. So I hope that helps. Why doesn't Avison Young, Cushman, etc. have a commercial MLS portal for convenience all under one umbrella? Steve, literally because they don't want it to be convenient. So I don't know if you've ever dealt with commercial brokers. Trying to think if I can find an exception to what I'm about to say. Give me some time. But I find most of them to either be giant assholes or incompetent, and neither of them are very customer service oriented, unfortunately. And the reason is because they really focus on their monopoly of relationships with property owners. Again, I'm not really that angry or judging them for it. I get why they want to be scarcity oriented with their information, because they're really information brokers and gatekeepers in that sense. And I also understand, as a larger property owner, you don't necessarily want all your shit just constantly available, right? Because then a bunch of looky-loos will be searching around your property all the time, scaring away tenants or causing issues. So again, I can say that I'm angry or frustrated with them for not wanting to make that information available. But at the same time, say if I was a customer of theirs, I'd probably want that service, right? That privacy, that more secrecy, where they're only going to really let people in the know or people capable or people trusted know about why I'm selling my portfolio or what I'm selling or things of that nature. Because again, think about it. If I decided to put up all my apartment buildings for sale tomorrow, a bunch of people might just go look and just gawk at them for the sake of gawking at them, right? Again, that's not good for anyone in that situation. So I think that those are all the reasons why, in my opinion, Steve, that's the case. But I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section. What are your theories on why commercial real estate agencies don't seem focused on convenience for buyers? Let me know. Do you suggest any good investor-focused realtors in Brantford? I'm sure that there are some good ones. I don't know any that are directly in Brantford proper as their primary base, but again, we've got like our local expert out of the Niagara St. Catharines area, Kayla. She's also from Hamilton region originally, so I wouldn't be surprised if she was relatively familiar with the Brantford market. Trying to think, yeah. I actually don't have a lot of great answers. You could definitely try and hit up some of my wholesale team, and the ones that work or have worked in Brantford might be able to help you out there. How do you feel about investing in Moncton, New Brunswick? I was talking about this earlier today. Were you reading my mind, Alex? Yeah, I see a lot of upside. Honestly, I see a lot of potential for appreciation. I'm not saying that it's going to be justified appreciation, but I think we're going to see a lot of speculators move into the East Coast because of the price point. Literally for the same logic that Supreme, and again, I'm not trying to like throw shade Supreme. I'm just hoping to try and educate you. The reason that Supreme's focused on like, hey, I can afford this much, so I want to buy something that fits within the box the bank told me to use. There's going to be a lot of people in Toronto and other high cost of living areas in Ontario that I think will be tempted to want to buy something cheaper in the East Coast, because right now it's not all the rage in mainstream media, but at some point in time, it's going to get caught on fire in mainstream media. They're going to want to do all these scare stories about the exodus from the cities and everyone fleeing big cities, and it's going to like impact real estate or culture, or they'll find some reason to be scared about it. And I think that what that'll actually do is light a bunch of people on fire to want to go do that. Like they're going to bemoan this, and they're going to create their own, like fulfill their own prophecy by talking about it. And so I do see a lot of opportunities in the East Coast as well. What's great is you could just buy and kind of wait and still cash flow in the meantime if the speculation doesn't come. You know, you're still not out that much, in my opinion. So you guys let me know. Should me and my company move out to the East Coast in a big way? I don't think that that's off the table. I don't think I'd personally move, although there is some really sweet mansions out on the East Coast that are on the ocean front and stuff. And it's like, it's cheap. It's like Quebec mansion prices out there. So it's only like Ontario and BC, which to me kind of seem like the nice places to live, that have the expensive mansions. I mean, if you'd be willing to live in Quebec, there's such nice mansions there. Can we all just agree to move to Quebec, guys? I was thinking about this the other day. What if we just all agreed? We'll just pick a little town, a little city, and we'll just go buy all the beautiful mansions there, beautiful countryside. You know, we can just kind of ignore the language laws. We'll just have our own little cluster there. What do you think? Should we go start a cult in beautiful Quebec? That would really piss them off. Maybe I'd go viral, though. Would I go viral if I started a Quebec cult? Also, the alliteration on that feels kind of good. I feel like news anchors might pick it up. Quebec cult. Yeah, there's something there. All right, guys. Quebec cult. All us Anglophones are going to move there and just ruin it. We're going to jack up their real estate prices and just ignore their language laws. I wonder, is this a conspiracy? Could I go to jail? I'm already under like home arrest, I guess, like the rest of the province, though, so it's not that big of a difference. Hey, Matt, I have a deal for 1.5 million multifamily, but only have 10% down, and the seller needs his mortgage assumed. Is there a way to make it work without much more cash? Yeah, Stephen, if you can get a second place in there, right? Get a second to cover the difference, or cross-collateralize against other assets or real estate you own, or bring on a JV partner that can make the gap up. That's awesome, Tanner. Tanner saying, didn't even know what a burr was before I found this channel. Just refinanced the first rental I bought in September and got all my money out. Second rental will refi next month. That's awesome, man. Appreciate you sharing that. What market are you in? You just slowed down hard. Yeah, I kind of rev up and rev down pretty fast. Weed is a psychedelic. What's your net cash flow, all properties combined? I swear to God, I couldn't even pass a lie detector on that, Steve. I have no idea. Like, gun to my head, I would die because I don't run the financials in my any of those businesses anymore. There's funner businesses for me to run, and I think ones with more exponential growth opportunities. So I still think that real estate's a very smart, wise investment. So we're still actively acquiring. I would love to buy all the apartments, but there's like I don't know. I was showing. I'll maybe tease one little thing here because I'm just in love with this shit. Um, but like, there's projects. This is going to be an exclusive, guys. I haven't shown this to anyone other than Lara, Peter, Adam, and Rebecca are the only ones who have seen this so far. But like, there's like things like this that I'm just like wildly excited about, and I just like, you know, that to me is just so much more fun than even actually knowing what my cash flow is these days. But it's enough to cover the properties and more. So we're definitely happy with our investments. Obviously, real estate's been doing really well. Like we're doing better than we should. Let's all own it, right? If you can't make money in this real estate market, like again, I'm not saying you can't make money in any market, but there's more people making money in this market than probably any market before. Now, is that sustainable? How long is that sustainable? Who knows? I don't claim to know any of that shit. But what I do claim to know is that the getting's pretty good right now. But it's also true in stocks. It's also true in cryptocurrency. It's true in almost any asset class that's not cash. So I think, you know, there's a bigger thing there, a giant elephant in the room that just none of us wants to like even really vocalize. But at some point in time, that cost is going to come due, right? Either we're going through rampant inflation that at some point in time is going to bleed into like an even more extreme consumer inflation. And like, I don't know if you guys have realized it, but consumer inflation is a lot more real than I think people give it credit for, right? Like either your packaging's getting smaller, your prices are going up, or often it's both. And to me, even the quality is going down right now during quarantine, it seems like. And so again, maybe this is me just like looking for a pattern, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. I definitely feel like we've experienced significantly more consumer inflation. But maybe it's also because like I also then like pivot on my consumption patterns, right? So like now everything's Instacart. So like there's not really coupon shopping. They don't even like essentially sell the no-name brand paper towels on Instacart, right? You're forced to buy the expensive ones. Same with the Kleenexes and all that stuff. Although I think the Kleenexes are worth it personally for that good Kleenex. But anyways, yeah, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot more consumer inflation than a lot of people are realizing, or at least I'm sure that the like those at the lower income spectrum are being hit hardest by it. But like in construction costs and real estate costs, all that stuff's going to eventually catch up. Right now, something that's fascinating to me, if we want to loop this back to real estate, guys, that I don't hear anyone talking about, is commercial real estate is way hotter than it should be. And so, like, what's going on with that? It's either a fear of inflation, which I think it is, or everything that's going on in the world doesn't impact the economy anymore. And I guess everything that I even thought I might have sort of could have almost understood about the economy isn't true. So like, it just like, it's crazy that every commercial property we look to rent in what should be like one of the worst markets ever has offers on it and is renting out. And like right now, trying to rent 10,000 square feet of light industrial or commercial space is actually significantly more difficult than you'd expect. There's not a lot of supply, and there's not a lot of like off-market supply either, because I'd like to think we're relatively connected, right? Like if someone should know about what's going on in the London, Ontario market, I'd like to think it'd be this guy. And like the fact that we can't seem to find a easy place to rent at essentially what would be a $12 all-in rental cost plus utilities per square foot for like light industrial or light commercial is pretty shocking, because like you easily could have done that pre-COVID, and why during COVID would it be harder? So just really interesting, weird developments there. And part of it is I think that I personally think a lot of people are hedging their bets thinking that there's going to be significant inflation. And so they're trying to lock in leases at low cost now before we start to really see the trickle down of all this inflation. But again, that could be tinfoil hat Matt. Asset prices like real estate and stocks have gone up a lot, but average salaries have stayed relatively the same for years. Yeah, absolutely. Like wage inflation is not keeping pace whatsoever. Hey, Matt, if the loan is recourse and the property is in a corp, can the bank go after your personal assets? Being like, yes and no. Like, odds are that you're going to have to sign a personal guarantee unless your corporation has been established for a significant period of time and has significant net assets and value in and of itself. You're likely going to personally guarantee it, right? So I understand most mortgages right now that we're getting for our apartment buildings, I still have to guarantee. I'm guaranteed on a lot of fucking shit. But again, no risk, no reward. So the key is like you have to believe in your shit so much that you're not scared, right? Like if you're scared of recourse mortgages, if you're scared of the bank coming after your personal assets, like you don't believe in your underlying business model enough. None of that shit scares me because I believe in what we're doing. And should I fail for still doing what we're doing, I know that I'm learning fundamentals. And so again, I will be able to repeat it, right? So if a black swan event comes, destroys me, I'll still have all the skills that I've developed up until that black swan event. Where again, that's one of the concerns and criticisms I was bringing up on today's live stream about cryptocurrencies specifically, but even more broadly about a lot of paper assets. And a lot of people that are essentially just speculating on paper assets or day trading on paper assets. Now, to a degree, there's a certain level of value created in helping the market become more efficient. But I honestly believe that the volatility we're seeing, it's not a reflection of any underlying assets, right? Like it's definitely not a reflection of those companies. And so, like, I don't know, how long can the market just stay irrational? Like, I know that the old adage, the market can always stay irrational longer than you can stay rational. So that's why you can't just try and be a rational actor. You need to take into context what's going on. But it's interesting to me and feels unsustainable. But I think things can also have a momentum and last a lot longer than we expect. One thing that I try and remind myself quite often is it's earlier than you think. And so as humans, we're often very impatient, especially for things that we think we see on the horizon. But it's usually earlier in the journey than you think, and you've got further to go than you realize. And that's why when you listen to successful people, they'll often say, man, if I knew how much work it was going to be, I don't think I ever would have done that shit, right? Like there's a lot of successful people I hear that when you hear their success, like that's something they're going to say. Now, again, I think there's a bit of humor in that, but there's also a certain level of truth to it. Because again, it often does take longer to become an overnight success than you realize. And I see it with almost every single person that launches a YouTube channel that reaches out to me, right? Like, because we all believe like deep down that there is something like really special about us. And like, I know it's hard for everyone else, but it'll be a little bit easier for us. But it usually ends up still being hard. So I forget how I got on that train of thought. Matt, please explain capital gains. I find it very hard to understand. Keith, capital gains is simply when you like sell something for more than what your adjusted cost base is. And normally people will associate that being with it's worth more than you worth more and disposed of it, so you sold it. And usually people will like for quick math, they'll say your adjusted cost base is your purchase price. Now, obviously, if you've depreciated the asset or you've made capital investment into the asset, your adjusted cost base could be slightly different. And you can look up what ACB is, adjusted cost basis, and that will help give you a deeper perspective into that. And understand, like, you guys, we'll do a little screen share here. So I think a lot of people, like, the tax code is both wildly complicated and very simple. I know that those are competing terms, but if you go to the T776, we should be able to. There'll be some sort of like a statement of real estate. There'll actually be a full document. Yeah, that's not what I want. Although even that document's helpful. But if we go TT7 explanation, maybe explained. Like Canada Revenue puts together this giant thing. Well, that's weird. TT7 explanation. Where there's like this awesome document you can literally download. And it's pretty long, but very effective. So, yeah, like there's somewhere a PDF of this that's really nice to look at. I'm probably just too impatient. Right there, the guide. I think, yeah. So like this guide here, 47 pages. So again, you might not want to read it right before bedtime, but there is real value in this. And it even tells you, is this guide for you? Use this guide if you had rental income from real estate. Oh, it's even got updates for pandemic and stuff. That's cool. And some proposed changes to some of the capital gains or capital cost. But essentially, like if you go through this line by line, again, it is a little tedious, but it's extremely thorough. And remember, Control F is your friend when you're trying to find shit here. So just hit that Control F and track things down. But like again, right here, it's breaking down whether things are current expense or capital expense, right? And I was talking about adding to your capital basis. So for example, if we're upgrading the property, if we build an addition to it, if we make a substantial improvement to it, in theory, we're adding to the cost basis there because it's not a current expense, because that cost should actually be allocated over the lifetime value of the asset, or at least the lifetime value of the improvement to the asset. So again, lots of details in here, but this will also, similarly to this, you can find a similar one probably on Schedule 3, which will be capital gains, or whatever it is. So guide, I think, is the key word here. But yeah, anyways, I won't put everyone to sleep about this, but you could go through this. And again, it's all written in English. You just need to take your time. And it's important you understand this stuff. At least in principle, you need to understand it. I lost people on the live stream because I showed taxes. That's funny. But the more you know. Hey, man, if you had 70K and were looking for cash flow, where would you invest? Windsor student rentals versus Toronto condo with interest-only payment. I would not do the Toronto condo. Straight up, no, hard pass. Now, understand, I've got a strong bias towards it. But the reason I'm going to say no to the Toronto condo with interest-only payments is because the only reason you can cash flow, presumably under that arrangement, is because of the interest-only payments. But I still have a bias to think you'll get more cash flow in another market. So for me personally, again, Windsor student rental, yeah, that would work for me. I wouldn't be afraid of just a Windsor rental. I wouldn't be afraid of a Sarnia rental. A London rental, St. Thomas, some of those areas, if I could pick it up. You know, even like a market like Welland, you might be able to find something at 70,000 is your down payment, assuming you can qualify for stuff. But yeah, those would be the markets I would be primarily focused on, but I would really be focused on buying off market with that kind of capital restriction. But again, understand, my overall answer is always we should really focus on using other people's money, so we shouldn't simply be restricted by our own assets. Thoughts on condos in the Yonge and Finch area? Good location. Like long term, it's a great location, right? You got the subway there. It's definitely a hub. So yeah, definitely see lots of value there. Same with like, there's a lot of condos being built further north on steels and stuff like that, right? So, yeah, like if we're just talking about thoughts on if it's a good location, seems like a good location to me. But that doesn't necessarily make it a good investment. English Quebec. Okay, I'm just catching up to the comments here. If the okay, we already covered that. Deal destruction, Steve. There's always a link in my Instagram bio if you want to book a deal destruction. So I think the next one is actually this Sunday or next Sunday. So it's coming up. We definitely need some more guests. So feel free to do that. Donuts at Timmy's went up 30 cents. I don't have context, so I don't know if that's a lot or not. I'm going to guess a donut's like $1.50. Is that how much a donut? I'm going to Google that. I'm curious now. What does a Tim Horton donut cost? Oh, my eyes lit up because it first showed me a croissant and it was $1.49, and I was so proud of myself. I don't even think I haven't gone to a establishment that would be like gone to establishment. I guess no one would have. But anyways, my point was I don't think I've given money to Tim Hortons for probably 3 or 4 months. Donut. Oh, 99 cents? That still seems pretty cheap. They used to be 69 cents? No, that doesn't sound right. Cost Finder mustn't be up to date. They mustn't have your new cost. So would I be correct in assuming the donut's $1.39? Because that seems like a decent hike. Or $1.29. What was it, 20, 30 cents? Yeah, guys, keep smashing that like button. I would definitely appreciate it. Mitchell, in regards to just propped up from stimulus, if we're talking about like long-term commercial leases, I don't know. Like, I don't see people wanting to go into that. Like, I guess maybe there is some interesting subsidies out there right now, but I guess those chasing that would have to be playing an interesting game where either they've got insider information. Because yeah, I just feel like I could see people committing to other things, but like a lease is a long thing, right? And usually you're talking minimum 3 to 5 years once we're getting into commercial leases. And again, you're like right now, because it's a relatively hot market, a lot of landlords are being picky and asking for all kinds of covenants and things like that. Like some of them don't even want to do any improvements, and like their property's been completely gutted. And you're like, you literally want me to rebuild your building for you. Is that the conversation we're having right now? This will lead to my question, LOL. Do you think the stock market is in a bubble? I think we're kind of touching upon that already. But like I don't even pay enough attention. I don't think a lot of the PEs are justifiable. So if that helps. But again, I don't think that anyone even cares about PEs. They'll probably soon stop teaching PEs when it comes to stock investing. Bill, hey Matt, found your videos and spent the past 2 weeks bringing them or binging them all. Laugh my ass off. I'm here in London, so stumbling onto your channel was so lucky. Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Glad to hear that you enjoyed it. So shout out to Bill there. This is my diecast life. Hey, Matt, I'm looking to buy a rental, maybe a fourplex. I'm running into issues with the property listing 900K to $1 million, but their tenants are paying $700 a month. What do you think to do? Yeah, that's definitely a thing you're going to regularly run into. It's definitely a frustration. You know, the first thing I like to do is try and negotiate with your terms, right? So I often like to push back on the seller and try and make it their problem. Be like, man, I'm going to lose so much money buying, if I can talk to the seller directly. I'm going to lose so much money buying this property. Like, this just doesn't work for me. I need something, like, something's got to give here, right? And so oftentimes that's me being like, man, I can maybe give you 700K for it as is with all these low rents, or like, you need to give me 2 vacant units and I can do your $1 million price, right? But without something like that, without some vacancies where you can get your property stabilized, you just can't justify paying that price, in my opinion. So I wouldn't invest in that sort of property without a clear path to cash flow within the first year. When we're doing our apartment buildings, we're usually aiming for a 12 to 24 month, and usually trying to stay 12 to 18 month turnaround cycle, right? On taking a non-cash flowing property to cash flow. I'll begin my first duplex soon for 2 different tenants. How do I make sure they shovel snow and cut grass for the property after they signed a separate agreement to shovel, cut grass? Awesome, Dave. I'm glad to hear you did that first, because that's a big part of it, right? Here in the province of Ontario, guys, understand you need to have a separate legally binding contract with your tenants if you're going to have them do snow removal and lawn maintenance, right? So you can't just put that into the tenancy agreement. Now, again, a lot of tenants do just do it, but that's not an ideal situation. You should, in theory, have that separate agreement or have a company taking care of it. So all that being said, I would, in a perfect world, you create an agreement with them where, like, there's enough benefit that they actually want to do it. So, like, in a perfect world, what you would do is, let's say you want to rent out the unit for $1,000 a month. You would say, hey, Mr. Tenant, I'm going to rent it out to you for $1,200 a month, and I will pay you a separate $200 a month maintenance contract. If you do not perform said maintenance, I will cancel maintenance contract, right? If you don't work on it. So then what ends up happening is they're now incentivized to actually do it. Now, the other thing is, a lot of people will do like a lawn maintenance agreement for $1. And again, that is a legally binding contract, but if they don't perform, it's difficult for us to really go back on them and really force much to happen, right? So, in the most extreme version of that, you could try and claim there's damages and claim the damages with the difference in cost between what you had agreed to pay them and what it ended up costing you to get done. But realistically, that's not going to work, or like that's not likely going to play out that way, I should say. So what I would do alternatively is ideally get someone else to do it. That's a more reliable system, in my opinion, unless you've got good tenants. I understand the desire just to offload it because it seems easier, but having a second set of eyeballs on the property can also be a benefit, right? If you're not going there for lawn or snow removal and there's not like another company or an employee of yours doing it, how often are you going to that property? Are you going there to check the smoke alarms? Are you going there at least once a year? And if not, again, it's like, things can really get off course with that. And so if you let a year or two lapse by, so having kind of that regular check-in, when I was doing my student rentals, when I used to have the time, I actually really enjoyed cutting the grass. One, I considered it free exercise. And two, I got to kind of see the condition of the property, right, every week in the summer. And so like 1 week you're like, smash beer bottles everywhere. Okay, time to have a conversation or an intervention. Matt, what are your top 3 tips or suggestions for new or first-time landlords? One of my favorite tips is company policy, no exceptions. So whatever rules you set in place, you need to stick by them. Now, again, don't put in arbitrary rules and don't put in any legal rules. But if you try and set expectations or set, clear communication channels, like, let's say we get our tenants to sign the electronic communication agreement, and you say that your preferred means of communication is, anything that's non-urgent is by email communication, and anything that's urgent, and you define whatever urgent is by phone call or by text message or by whatever other form. Again, like, we try and manage our channels of communication with your tenants, what you don't want to do is have them like send you Facebook messages, Instagram messages, emails, text messages, and leaving voicemails. It can really become overwhelming. So really set expectations to what channels are appropriate for communication. As well, you can be friendly, but not friends. So again, you can have a friendly demeanor, you can be helpful, you can be, problem solving oriented, but don't become BFFs with your tenants. Just don't do it, right? Like, and can you have your BFFs become tenants? Yes, but be honest with yourself, right? So whether we're looking at joint venture partnership or letting friends or family become tenants of ours, how have their previous tenancy relationships been, right? Did they get evicted from their last few properties? Well, then you shouldn't expect anything different just because they're renting your property, right? And again, if you're willing to take on that risk, so be it, but just understand that there's a risk involved with that. So that's 2 tips. The third tip I would give you is you have to follow the proper, like assuming you're in Canada or a tenant-friendly jurisdiction, you need to follow the rules. And so it sounds very obvious and evident, but what I'm actually going to say about this is like you need to follow the eviction rules, right? So like if a tenant's late on payment, you need to file that N1, that notice of late payment quickly. You need to file it in a timely manner. Now, it doesn't mean that we're aggressive. It doesn't mean that we're mean. In fact, we can even give some context to it like, hey, I don't want this to stress you out. Don't worry, you're not about to get evicted right away, but this is the policy, right? And if you read the form, it explains everything to you. If you're able to pay me in the next day or two, that's awesome, but I'm still going to give you the form. Again, this is just me doing my best practices, and this is company policy, no exceptions, but I'm still going to be friendly and problem solution oriented, right? So if they're like, hey, I can do this payment schedule, as long as I have a reason to believe that they're acting in good faith, we're going to move forward with the payment schedule, right? So yeah, fuck. I just realized I'm saying so often, but I kind of give Hi Matt leniency when it comes to saying and ah and so often, but there's been a lot of ums and so's. At least those last few dozen were on purpose. Now there's a little more balance. Chris, hey Matt, wondering if you could touch on the preferential tax treatment of capital gains versus rental employment income. Yeah, so currently there is preferential tax treatment, right, with capital gains. Now, again, there's a lot of like asterisks and aspects here. So understand you can't just start going around and start calling everything you want to be a capital gain. And sometimes people try and get really creative and do things like this, right? We stopped it there. There wasn't a filler word after the capital gains versus rental employment income. So capital, fuck, God damn it. How do you start sentences? Capital gains are treated in a tax preferential manner in Canada. And what I mean by that is it's got a 50% inclusion rate. And so that 50% inclusion rate simply means that, let's say I've got a $100,000 margin or a $100,000 capital gain. 50% of that is going to be included in my taxable income at my current taxable rate. So if I'm at 50% tax rate, this is often the analogy I use, then I've got $100,000 capital gains, 50% of it's included. So I've got $50,000 that's now taxable, and my tax rate's 50%. So now it's $25,000 in taxes. So my effective tax rate on that capital gain is in fact 25%, where my effective tax rate on any additional rental income or employment income that I would receive at that point in time would be at that 50% rate, right? So essentially you're getting half off. Now, I've got what I consider to be a great video out on Canadian capital gains that I'd really encourage you guys to go check. And in that video, I talk about how there's been multiple changes to our capital gains tax inclusion rates in Canada. Up until 1973, it didn't exist. Since then, we've had it yo-yo from, I forget what the lowest it's been, but then I think the highest was a 75% inclusion rate. But then we've had different points where it was like a 60% 66% and like a 2/3 or something weird. Like there's been a bunch, and there's a lot of fear or concerns that if we get another socialist oriented government, so like a liberal or NDP or green government, one of the first things they may go after is capital gains. And the second thing I think they're going to go after, and the liberals are already setting it up to do this. So if you didn't see this coming a mile away, you're just being naive, is taxing principal residence capital gains. And that is going to get people pissy, and that's probably going to cost someone an election. But they'll probably do it right after an election to try and like help budget or balance a budget. But we're probably past the point of balanced budgets at this point in time. We'll just start creating new language around it. The Ministry of Truth will give us some new guidance in regards to our terminology there. But yeah, that's my thoughts when it comes to capital gains. And well, that's not my thoughts. That's first I started with the facts, and then I guess I ended there with my thoughts in that regard. So hope that helps, but go watch that video because we're pretty thorough in the explanation there, I believe. What is administration fee in CRE? I don't know. What do you think of multifamily buildings in Sault Ste. Marie? Just really understand what you're getting into in those markets. God damn it. In those markets. Sault Ste. Marie, understand, is in our northern Ontario. And there's 11 markets in northern Ontario. Sault Ste. Marie is one of those markets. Sudbury is the only market in northern Ontario that actually has positive population growth projected through the next 20 years. I don't even know how to talk without filler words. It's pretty much impossible. You look high right now. Actually, there's times that I look pretty fucking high. So I feel like this is actually a pretty mild version. Put it this way, either way, it's a ripoff. Love house hacking. Cash for keys, yeah. Cash for keys can be a great way to get tenant turnover, right? Again, you need to understand the context there, though. Not all cash for key situations are going to be created equal. So the premium that the person has in regards to their current rent versus fair market rent is really going to dictate the amount of cash for keys that the amount that you're going to need to use for cash for keys, likely. All right. Well, we're coming up on an hour here. That's pretty good. Hey, Matt, you mentioned last week that you've almost sold all your personal properties. What did you mean by that? I meant that I've almost sold all my personal properties. I've only got 2 properties left that I currently own in my personal name. All the other real estate I own is now in corporations and things of that nature. So we're looking at, I probably disposed of 100 units over the course of the last year and a half, and then acquired 120-ish units in different entities and different style of buildings and asset classes as well. So like a lot of investors, went from the greenhouses to the red hotels. So diversifying out of my like D and C class properties and student rentals and getting into more C plus and B, and maybe, I know people are really picky when it comes to A's, so I won't even say an A, but in my mind they're almost A minus properties. I know that gets some people pretty shook because they think an A needs to be a perfectly immaculate property. But in my mind, if it doesn't cash flow, it's not even technically a rental property. Ooh, hard shade thrown. But that's my thoughts. Texas is going to have some nice inventory soon. Potentially. Actually, though, who was it? Someone was talking about. Oh, I was watching. This will be polarizing. I was watching Alex Jones on Steven Crowder, and It was funny. They were riffing on how Joe Rogan and Elon Musk are creating a super society in Texas, and that they've got like plans to, you know, I forget how far down the rabbit hole they went, but it was just kind of funny. But I actually, if I was going to move to the U.S., it'd probably be Puerto Rico followed by Texas. I think currently, maybe Las Vegas, but those would probably be the three most likely. And then maybe like some, yeah, maybe then a couple unusual ones you wouldn't expect. And how long does the second private typically amortize? It's really it's going to be whatever you set it to be there, Chris. But most common, it's going to be shorter than whatever your first. Well, like most seconds, probably. I don't know. I'm going to make up a number here, but 50%. And I'm probably only wrong by 100% margin here. 50% of second place mortgages are interest only, and the other half will be very low repayment terms. So maybe somewhere from like a 10 to a 25 amortization period. And again, not with the intentions that it's going to last that long, but that you'll refinance out after a certain period of time. Thoughts on multifamily investing in Calgary? Ryan, just understand Calgary is a much more boom bust market, right? So good times, bad times, but there's a lot of different times when it comes to Calgary. Hey, Matt, I would like to know if you own any properties outside Canada. Nope. Do you plan on having some in the future? It's not impossible. I think the next society, let me know. Depending on how you guys go over the next 5 years will dictate whether I own real estate outside of Canada or not. So once the entire world decides whether we're getting our shit together or not, if we don't, I probably won't own real estate outside of Canada, or if I do, I'll never talk about it. And if we all pull together and get our shit together, then yeah, it'd be kind of cool to own like a nice little island getaway. And that would still be fun. Can you contact the bank's appraiser yourself? No. Well, you probably can, but they will not like that. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap up here on Instagram. Appreciate you guys watching. YouTube, please smash that like button. I'll answer a couple more questions if you guys do. Just got to post this on IGTV first. And actually, we should all just give a small round of applause to both my internet and Instagram. Neither one of them gave up today. And that probably hasn't even happened this year. All right. Question. If we get higher inflation than expected, do you think Saskatchewan and Alberta may implement rent controls on increases? I don't think so. I don't know how much imbalance is there in the politics out there. I don't follow the provincial politics. So I guess if there's a very socialist oriented government, then yeah, that seems like it could be a threat, but I doubt it. Now again, if we're talking hyperinflation, then yeah, definitely. Like if all of a sudden we saw like 100% yearly inflation or something greater than that, I think we would start to see government step in. But until that sort of stage of hyperinflation, I don't think they will. How do you buy a third house when the bank won't lend you any more money, even with two cash flowing properties? Brian, you need to talk to other people. Talk to a lot more lenders. If every bank tells you no, then go to B lenders. If B lenders tell you no, then go to private lenders, go to mortgage investment corps. But you should also be talking to a bunch of mortgage agents or mortgage brokers. If you haven't checked out the guys at Finlay, right? They're here every Friday. I don't remember the exact time we're dropping them now, but it's either like 4 or 6 p.m. on Fridays, guys. Jump over, check out their videos. We've got all their contact information in the video description under there. Very friendly guys, and they don't bite. Like, I don't understand why people are so scared to make a phone call, right? These phone calls are free. No one laughs at you if you like say the wrong thing. but it's so important that you get real understanding behind your specific situation and scenario, because there's just way too many people that get told no once and accept it. And I'm guilty of that, right? Literally understand, in 2012, my life changed because one banker said no to me. So we were buying a student rental a year. Like, I would literally, again, the future or like the past is the past, but like I would definitely have a couple more $1,000,000 than I do today had that banker not said no to me, because we had a very robust business model. But anyways, they told me no, and I wasn't smart enough or gutsy enough to go talk to other lenders. I just assumed because one person told me no that everyone would tell me no. But that would be like, you go ask one person out, they tell you no, and you're like, oh, I'm never going to ask someone out again. That's literally the perfect way to never get what you want of that scenario, right? So the same thing holds true when we're talking about mortgages, or really anything you want. What you need to do is switch your mindset into, I'm getting a mortgage, I'm going to get my third mortgage, and now it's just a matter of you discovering or figuring out how to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. Like, I've got people on my network that haven't had a job in decades that only have student rental properties, which are supposed to be difficult to rent, and they're able to still buy more, right? And I also know people that have huge incomes and huge HELOCs and could buy property in cash, but are too scared to pull the trigger. So a lot of it's just us investing in ourselves, get some basic knowledge, get some basic confidence, get some perspective. So appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. Love all the love in the comments. We're back on the live streams earlier in the day, so check out those. We're going to be kind of playing around with the timings over the next couple of weeks, but definitely give us your feedback. Seemed like we had our highest concurrent live stream today, so one, thank you guys for that. Two, give us feedback. Is there a reason? Or is it just the magic of the YouTube algorithm? I would love to know. Let me know in that comment section, and we will see you guys later.